Hi again, this is Mark Musgrove, and tonight my co-host Tim Andrews and I have a very special guest. Brandon Massullo is a clinical therapist, author, and parapsychologist residing in Northeast Ohio. He has graduate degrees in clinical counseling from the University of Toledo and psychological research methods from the University of Edinburgh in Scotland, UK. Brandon's research is centered on environmental sensitivity and ghostly encounters. Brandon has been fascinated by paranormal phenomenon for 20 years and has been a participant and featured speaker in numerous paranormal forums and events, including the radio program Coast to Coast AM. Brandon's research has also been published in many academic journals, and he has a website named hauntedtheories.com. Let's welcome Brandon Massullo. How you doing, Brandon?
Great, great. It's great to talk to people from basically right around me here in Ohio.
It is. So thank you for being on here, and we're excited to talk to you. The first thing I thought of is you're both a psychologist and also a parapsychologist, and that is a real interesting combination. So do you do both independently, or is it a merging of your two fields?
I It's a complicated question because the majority of the time, anytime you do clinical counseling, my primary job, my full time job is clinical counseling. That's how I pay the bills, and that's your individual counseling, your group counseling, your assessments, diagnosis, treatment, all that fun stuff. Parapsychology is sort of different in a way. So that's a little bit more research based. So that's a little bit more about just writing academic papers, literature review. Sometimes we do statistical analysis on information that's given to us. And that's more of the sort of the research side of it. So you have the research side of it, and then you have the clinical side of it. Now, there is a thing called clinical parapsychology, and that's basically where, you know, kind of like in a boiled down version, you counsel people who are going through what they call parapsychological stressors, like struggling with poltergeist phenomenon or telepathy, or maybe they had a precognitive dream that something bad was going to happen to their mom and it actually did. So you can imagine like living with that as part of it. So there is a mixture of it with clinical parapsychology, but you know, 99.9% of the people I see in the clinical world are depression, anxiety, bipolar, trauma, those types of things. So they do mix. I would say that and I can't remember the exact statistics, but I think there's something like, I think 40% of Americans believe in ghosts or something like that. The numbers always go up and down with that. But I think we're somewhere in between 30 to 40% of people believe in ghosts. So that does come up in therapy sessions, as you can imagine.
Go ahead, Tim. You're eager for a question.
Well, Brandon, first of all, thank you for coming on. We appreciate you. My question now, at the risk of sounding like someone in a Senate judiciary hearing,
Okay.
I used to think this was a pretty clear-cut answer until I've spoke with other guests and started talking with other folks once we got this YouTube channel up and rolling. But what is your definition of a ghost?
Oh, I hate that question. Uh, it does feel like I'm on a set of, what'd you call it, a judiciary?
Can you even define what a ghost is?
Yeah. Uh, I think there's so many definitions for it. I mean, the obvious one is, you know, a deceased soul that is roaming the earth due to some unfinished business. So that's your typical apparition, mist-like phenomenon. But hauntings and ghosts can come in different forms. So, a ghost could be a sense presence, right? It doesn't have to be an actual apparition. A ghost could be, hearing a voice that's not there, a discarnate voice. It could be tactile phenomenon, someone pulling at your shirt, right? It could be energy lights or lights flickering or objects moving, right? Those are all sort of under the category of a ghost. Um, And then when it comes to the actual, what is a ghost, it could be, we talk about psychokinesis. You guys heard of psychokinesis before? The ability to move objects with your brain, your mind. Is an object moving just me moving it, or is it a spirit in the room? Ghost, is it a deceased soul, or is it just a consciousness hanging around? Some people think it's like psychic imprints that are burned into the environment. That's not necessarily a deceased soul. It's more or less just a tape recording in the background that we just pick up on.
Like an echo?
Like an echo? Yeah. Yeah. So, the traditional definition of a ghost kind of varies. So when you look at the phenomenon, it's good to go in with no definition, look at everything as you sort of come upon it, and then kind of see where it goes. I'm not one of those guys that likes to figure out the whys. So you walk into if you go to a haunted location, everyone wants to know, who's the ghost haunting it? Is it the former owner? Is it someone who died tragically? They want to know the origin stories all the time. And I'm more focused on the actual phenomenon. It's not that I don't care about the origin stories, but I'm more interested in finding out why people are seeing these apparitions or sense of presence or hauntings. And, if I find out a little bit about the history, that's fine. But it's not necessary to study ghosts or be interested in ghosts to find out the whys behind it.
And is both a clinical therapist and a parapsychologist, when somebody comes to you with a story, when they tell you something, it certainly helps being an expert on human behavior, I would imagine.
Sure.
How long does it take you to sniff out if it's some kind of a psychosis, or if these folks are legit and really asking or telling you a legitimate story?
It's actually not as easy to parcel out psychosis as some people think. We go about our days assuming that we can pick out someone who is actively psychotic or schizoaffective or schizophrenic or has mania or disorganized thoughts or religious preoccupation, or we think we can do that. But there's a lot of people schizophrenics that are very good at masking it. They know, if I say this, people are going to look at me weird, right? So, and a lot of people with schizophrenia are very high functioning people in the society, from physicians to lawyers to therapists to, probably in politics as well, So people with schizophrenia are all around, and they're very high functioning. Yeah, they're very high functioning. They're very intelligent. People with bipolar, who have episodes of mania, they're all around us. So this idea that we could spot psychosis from a mile away is not necessarily true. Sometimes when it's highly intense and acute, obviously you can. If you sit in a room with somebody for an hour, you're probably going to pick out some delusions. You're probably going to pick out some things that just don't seem right. They seem irrational or disorganized thinking. So maybe sitting with somebody for an hour, you'll be able to probably pick it apart if you're experienced in finding these things and asking the right questions. But it's not that easy. When people have these ghostly stories all the time. When I go to conferences or paranormal conventions, when people come up to me and start talking about their experiences, it can start very small, such as a sense presence, and then turn into demons. You start off with, there was a sense presence in my house, and then 15 minutes later, demons are in my closet. So it can go from something small to something really intense. But it's not as easy as people think. I think obviously those trained in it are better at picking that out. But with clinical parapsychology and with regular clinical counseling, it's important to know what to look for. But not all people who have ghostly stories are crazy or schizophrenic or delusional or anything like that. It's actually a lot of people, a majority of people who have these ghostly phenomenon don't score high in these sort of personality tests which determine psychosis or schizotypal personality disorder. People with ghosts don't really have those sort of critical thinking errors that I think a lot of people presume that they have. That's just sort of kind of a myth that's been put out there, unfortunately.
And you've mentioned, excuse me, you've mentioned in the past haunted people, which are people who are more susceptible to seeing and hearing these phenomena than maybe other people.
Yep.
What kind of do you think contributes to that, or what attributes those people have? Is it kind of akin to some people are susceptible to being hypnotized and others are not, or are they just more accepting, or is there any explanation for why some people are more susceptible?
Yeah, I think there's, one of the things that I've been really fascinated with in the last, 10 years or so has been, why does this person have all these ghostly encounters and this person has none? Like, what is the difference between them? And then why is this location haunted and the one next door have no ghosts? What's the difference between them? So we really, myself, along with some other researchers, have kind of really tried to peel back the layers on this to see if we can come to some sort of consensus or anything that sort of can give us a better idea of why that is. When it comes to people, we found that there's certain traits that people have that seem to be more, the people with these traits seem to have more ghostly encounters than the general population. One of those traits has to do with sort of, I'll call it environmental sensitivity, but it's a sensitivity to the environmental variables that are around us. So I'll give you an example. So if I walk into a room and there's neon lighting above me, the table or the chair I just sit in was just washed in bleach. The guy next to me has Old Spice. He's covered in Old Spice head to toe. It doesn't really bother me. Another person may get headaches from the fluorescent lighting. They may get a rash from the bleach on the chair, and they may get nauseous from the Old Spice, right? So there's two people, same situation. One is just reacting differently than the other. Their body just reacts differently, correct? I don't know if you guys consider yourself sensitive or not when it comes to environmental stuff, but there's people like that. There's people with sensitivities to chemicals. There's people who, with migraines, high allergic reactions to things. Just the environment just impacts them a little bit differently. And what we found is these people who are sort of categorized as environmentally sensitive have way more paranormal experiences than those that don't. Now, this doesn't have anything to do with psychic sensitivity or being a medium or having telepathy or anything like that. They're just, the environment just impacts them a little bit more. Those people have way more ghostly experiences. And there's also some psychological traits. Transliminality is one of them. That's sort of this, we all have this sort of security guard in our head. So when I'm talking to you, it's blocking out all the things that are going on in my house right now. Like my wife's watching TV. There's a fan on over there. It's raining outside. It's hailing outside. But my brain is blocking those off because I'm focused on something. Some people's security guard isn't as good as blocking those things off. So they have all these external things coming in. Plus it's mixing with their subconscious and internal thoughts. And it's just banging around in their head a little bit more. And they tend to have a little bit more ghostly experiences too. Past paranormal beliefs, how you grew up, your culture, that's kind of mixed in as well. So all these facets go under something that we've been working on. It's haunted people syndrome is what we call it in the literature. There was a book that was written called Ghosted. If anyone's interested in this, it goes over all these variables and all the research over the past 5, 6, 7, 8 years on this as well. But we're coming to an idea of what makes a person more susceptible to ghosts. But again, it's not 100%. So I could not have environmental sensitivity or transliminality or all these things in my head, and I could still have a ghostly experience. We're just finding that these people who have all these have 2 to 3 to 4 times more paranormal than the general population.
Do you find that religion has anything to do with it? Maybe somebody that's more of a believer or a Christian has more or less experience with these phenomena than maybe somebody that is an atheist or an agnostic?
I think an agnostic or an atheist would discount or explain away a lot of things. From what I find is religion usually has to do with how they interpret we call it ambiguous stimuli. So if I'm in a house by myself and if I see a dark shadow go by, and I hear a loud noise, if I'm Catholic or Christian, I may interpret that as demonic, right? If an atheist is in the same place and they see a shadow, they may interpret that as whatever. But how I interpret the events or the anomalous phenomenon usually has to do with your religion. So that's, from my experience, what happens. I think, living in the country, we get sometimes we get a sulfur smell from the iron, right? So a sulfur smell for a country folk means this place got high iron. Somebody who may be overtly religious and smells sulfur may think what?
Demons,
Right? So
hell.
yeah, it's these types of things. It's the same stimuli, but how we interpret that is based on how we grew up, our cultural beliefs, and our view of the world as it is. If I'm highly religious and I come across, a crucifix on the floor that wasn't there 10 minutes ago, I automatically assume that the ghost threw it off the wall and hit the floor. Whereas if I'm atheist or agnostic, I think, well, maybe a ghost knocked it off the floor, but it has nothing to do with religion. So you see how I'm saying it's kind of peppered in how we view
Sure.
things, not so much increased likelihood of having it. I hope that made sense. I ramble a lot. That's what I do.
No, that's okay. Hey, Brandon, we're talking right now mostly about an individual experience. What about shared experiences where it's two people that see the same thing, or will one person see it and another not? Or does having multiple people give it more credibility, or not necessarily?
I think it would. I think it would give it a lot more credibility. I think if two people see the same thing and have the same report, I think that is pretty good data to suggest that something abnormal is happening. If that happens, you sometimes think, well, this is more of an external thing, right? So if I see an apparition, that's subjective experience, right? It's not objective if it's not caught on tape or anything like that. Just like if I feel a cold spot, that's sometimes more subjective, or nausea or intense emotions. That's subjective. That means it's internal as far as me. But objective means something that's happening externally. So if two people see something, you would assume that it's something happening in the environment. Now, does that mean it's a ghost? I don't know. Maybe they're both misinterpreting the same thing. Maybe a car went by and the headlights went through the mirror, went off the mirror, up into the ceiling. You know what I'm saying? And they both saw the same thing. But, so I think that it would provide more sort of data. But then again, it doesn't necessarily overtly mean that happened. So I always feel like you go into these situations, you want to be enchanted by it. You want to step outside the norm and be fascinated with the paranormal. And that's why you go into ghost hunting or paranormal research. It's why 90% of the people go out and do these types of things, right? It's probably why you're actually...
I'm not going out there.
Oh, you're not going to haunted places? Okay.
We love talking about it, but we're too cowardly to go to the haunted places.
Oh, okay.
Mark said, hey, Tim, let's go grab a Ouija board and go to a haunted place with a candle and sit in a pentagram in an attic and see what's going on out there, huh, Mark?
Yeah. I think that's, from my experience, the majority of people just want to step out of their normal lives. It's very mundane. We kind of do the same thing every day. We wake up, we go the same places. We drive the same routes. It's sort of disenchanting.
I find it fascinating. I'm not saying in a certain circumstance I wouldn't do it, but we just love hearing the stories. We're kind of fascinated like everybody else is with the stories. Let me ask you something real quick. And Mark, I don't want to monopolize everything. I know I'm asking the majority of the questions. I'll ask this and then I'll shut up. But you talked a little bit about different occurrences between living people. Say somebody's injured, a wife or something. I think you talked about in a car accident, broke their arm. And was it the husband or the sister or somebody felt the pain
Yeah.
in their arm, or people talking or communicating somehow in the middle of the night. And that leads into one other thing too, is kind of joint dreams. Have you ever had a situation where, say, somebody, and I'm not going to mention their name, but somebody had a dream where they were yelling for like their brother. They were yelling outside of a window. Okay. And they talked to their brother the next day, and their brother at about the same time was having a dream where they were the recipient. They heard their brother yelling at them through the window that they needed help. In fact, that brother called the other the next day and asked if everything was all right, early in the morning when they woke up. Have you ever heard anything like that as well? Like a dream where people are kind of almost sharing the same dream? And I know you've talked a little bit about experiences where somebody doesn't have to be passed to project that pain or those emotions, or communicate with somebody else that's still alive.
Yeah. So what you're talking about is a little bit of what's called crisis apparitions, or entanglement, or telepathy. So when we think of telepathy, it's a lot of people think it's read my mind and tell me what number I'm thinking, right? Or I'm gonna communicate a number to you and just tell me what it is. So it's like reading minds type thing. But telepathy is a little bit more than that. Sometimes it has to do with physical feelings that we get. So in the book I wrote called The Ghost Studies, I talk about a couple cases where one of them where it was a mother and daughter. The daughter was away in college, thousands of miles away, and the mother was at home. And the mother had this overwhelming pain in her right hand, I believe, almost like it was on fire. And then she didn't know what was going on, but she was in really pain and she was screaming and upset. And what happened was that her daughter, miles away, had poured acid on her hand during a college class. And what happened was she got this feeling right as her daughter poured the acid on her hand. So you have this idea of communication at a distance almost instantaneously, right? Now, what's past is not so much thoughts, but feelings. So think about this. If I'm the daughter, I'm in pain. All these emotional stuff's going on inside me. I'm in pain. Somehow that leaves my body, goes into the environment, travels thousands of miles. This message kind of goes inside the mom's body, and her body interprets it, and it comes out as pain, the same thing her daughter is thousands of miles away. So think about all the things, how complex that has to be, right? And so that's sort of a form of telepathy. It's communication at a distance instantaneously, or entanglement. There's cases of this all the time. You mentioned the one that you talked about was there was a husband at home on the computer, and his wife had went out with, I think, her friends for a ladies' night or a girls' night out. And as he was on the computer playing, he looked to the side and saw his wife in the corner of the room, pale, disheveled, and holding her arm like this. So obviously he was a little scared, and then it disappeared. Now, a couple moments later, he actually got a phone call. I can't remember the specifics of it, but she had gotten into a car wreck and broke her right arm, which she was holding. So this is communication at a distance. Somebody is in distress, whether it's the girl at college or the wife, and when they're in distress, they send this distress call out, and it's linked or connected, or people who are usually close to them receive the call, and it comes out in the form of an apparition or pain or something like this. And we see these things all the time. We call them crisis apparitions. You see them sometimes with ghosts. They get confused as ghosts too. So if I'm laying in my bed at 1 o'clock at night and a apparition of my aunt is floating above me, and she says, "I love you, goodbye." And then I wake up the next morning and I get a call saying, "Hey, your aunt died at 1 a.m. last night." Right? That's the moment that I saw her floating above me. Now, if I've never had a ghostly experience in my life, and I'm 45 years old, what are the odds that I have a ghostly experience the exact moment that my aunt dies and it's of my aunt saying goodbye? Sometimes that's not correlation, but that's causation. It almost seems like one caused the other. So that's where we talk about evidence or data. The probability of that happening is astronomical. Astronomical. The amount of minutes I'm alive on this planet to only have one ghostly encounter right when my aunt dies and it's of my aunt, to me, it blows. It's not correlation, it's causation. One thing happened and it caused the other. It's not misinterpretation. It's not this, it's that. So I think these types of cases are really powerful. Shared dreams sometimes can be considered a little bit of that telepathy too, entanglement. I've read about astral projection, or if someone's really thinking about somebody else, they've been able to sort of communicate with them through the dream process or when they're in their dream states. So I've heard of these types of things. Dreams aren't really my wheelhouse, more or less. It's more the ghosts, the crisis apparitions, the telepathy, the entanglement. But it kind of falls under that because it seems like when we're in our dream states, we might be more susceptible to these sort of communication, telepathy type environments. They had a whole research project years and years ago that had to do with sensory deprivation and dream studies and telepathy happening while people were in dreaming states.
Have you ever ran into somebody, or actually, have you ever had an experience or through somebody's story where it's totally scared the crap out of you?
Totally.
I mean, do you have one that sticks? Like, what's the first thing that comes to mind?
I've heard so many stories. I don't think I can get the crap scared out of me.
Really?
Yeah.
So are you desensitized to it, or is it just a normal part of the world?
Probably desensitized to it. I've read so many ghost stories and heard so many ghost stories, from sense of presence all the way up to demons, that nothing really shocks me too much. So I can't give you something that really, really scared me.
How about the most unusual? What's the most unusual story you think you've ever heard? At least one of the most unusual, Brandon.
I honestly think these crisis apparitions are probably the most unusual stories I hear. I mean, I've heard several stories of people seeing their parents the moment they passed, seeing their friends or loved ones, even pets. There was one story I have in the book where somebody's pet passed away, and the pet ran away or something like that, and they found out through sort of telepathy what happened. So I think that these sort of connections, these entanglements, these are kind of cool things. To me, they're the most fascinating and the most they cause the most interest from me, because we're all sort of desensitized when it comes to ghost stories, right? You turn on any television show or any YouTube channel, and there's people in a haunted house telling you ghost stories, showing you flickering lights, and talking about how this person roams the hall because they were murdered in this place. So it's just constantly bombarded in us, these ghost stories and ghost stories and ghost stories and ghost stories. And certain shows really promote portals to hell or demons or dolls that come alive and murder us. So it's so ingrained, and it seems so desensitized and normal that it's hard to find a story that can top that. But you don't see these crisis apparition stories on the shows on TV. You just don't see them. Poltergeist stuff, I think, is sometimes fascinating too. There was a lot of people don't know there was a poltergeist story in Poland, which had prominent scientists working on it, from physicists to nuclear engineers to physicians to the government was involved. And this girl was, I think, 12 or 13 at the time, and all these specialists were studying her and documenting, and they couldn't find any reason why this stuff was happening. They even put her in a hospital room for months, and this was a kind of a smaller girl. And during one of her episodes, when she had these episodes of psychosis, things would fly around, glass would break, but she was alone in her room, and a sink was pulled off the wall. The metal hinges pulled off the wall, and the steel faucet was wrapped like a piece of paper, just.
Wow.
And she came into the room, the nurses came into the room, and glass was spinning in the air. One nurse was in another room, and she was cleaning something and looking in a mirror, and the mirror just disappeared in front of her, reappeared in another room, and shattered and broke. So this is all documented by a hospital, by physicians, by the most prominent researchers in Poland at the time.
Now we're talking.
Yeah, it's a whole book. The book came out.
Wow.
Oh, I have it here somewhere. I'm not going to remember it. I could text it to you guys either. But it's a fascinating story and a fascinating read. We wrote a paper on it, just how fascinating it was, because you don't see this type of stuff. You think poltergeist, and maybe the Warrens were in there, or but never really scientists studying somebody for years and years and years. And it happened in Poland in the 80s, so it's not too far ago.
Wow.
Ago. This isn't in the 60s or 50s or 40s or anything like that.
Yeah, you text it over. We'll put it down there. We like to, we want to talk about, your books too. You have the Ghost Studies and Haunted Medina County.
Yes, Medina County, yeah.
Which hits close to home, right? So, real quick, what was the most haunted place that you discovered in that county, in Medina County?
I always struggle with how to answer that. Is that the most ghosts or ghost stories with a location, or the one that I've had an experience in? What do you think?
Maybe both.
We want your experience.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I always preface this by saying that I've been going to haunted locations. I don't even want to say how long, because it's going to date me. But
as a teenager,
well, not as a teenager. I would go to graveyards, but I wasn't really going to haunted places as a teenager. But it's been probably 20 years or so. And then I studied in Scotland at the University of Edinburgh, which Edinburgh is an old city, and every place there is haunted. I did my dissertation at Mary King's Close, which is an underground city there, where they used to supposedly throw people with the plague down there to die. And I walked down there by myself 5 days or so, and I didn't have any paranormal experiences. But then when I came here to Medina, I went to Lodi, which people don't know. Lodi is sort of a rural town here in Medina County. Medina County in general is a rural area, but there's a historical society there called the Waite Harris House. And the Waite Harris House now is the historical society, but it used to be a house of a prominent physician in the area. And the basement has a lot of stories associated with it. People were the previous occupants there. If you went down in the basement, a lot of times they would feel a presence down there. One gentleman talked about how he was walking up the steps from the basement going to the kitchen, and it felt like a hand grabbed his shirt, pulled him right back down. Psychics in the basement claim to see or speak to a woman down there. There was an episode or an event that happened on the first floor in the parlor area, where a woman who was living there at the time was upstairs. This was late at night when she was by herself. She got this overwhelming urge to go down the steps and play the piano. No reason why, just an overwhelming urge. She was playing the piano, and as she was playing, an apparition appeared right in front of her and was watching her. And then as she continued to play and watch, it just disappeared.
I thought for sure you were going to say they sat on the piano and started to sing. That would have really freaked me out.
Yeah. Well, that would have freaked me out too. But it was the guy that used to live there. when I was down in the basement, when I was writing the book, I had to go to all the locations and take pictures and speak to the people that were there. So I was in the basement taking pictures by myself. And the basement's really old. It's one of those cellar basements. And it's almost like a long hallway, but I was moving from the boiler area down the long hallway, which was storage. So there was like a doorway there. And as soon as I passed through the doorway, I heard a woman's voice whisper in my ear, "Hello." Now, not only did I hear it, but if someone whispers really close to you, what else? You
feel it.
Yeah, it's like a breath on your ear, right? So I heard it and I felt it at the same time. So that's auditory and tactile at the same time, right? So those are two things. We talk about evidence and data and things like that. Now, I don't know. I didn't know what to do because you read all these books and they don't really tell you what to do when you have a ghostly encounter, right? So I took a bunch of pictures. I walked around. I tried to ask questions, and I didn't get much else on the pictures or any other sort of forms of communication. But I always found that location to be very fascinating. The downtown Lodi, for people who aren't familiar, is really small. It's a really small square, but there's a lot of history there. That house, across the street from that house, was where the founder of Lodi lived. He built his house on top of a mound, right? And as they were digging the basement out of that mound, they kept coming across bones, right?
Ooh.
Lots of bones. And what they found odd was sometimes as they dug deeper and deeper, they found an altar and bones scattered throughout that as well. And then they found bones that were giant bones. Supposedly the people back then could put those bones over their head like a helmet. And the teeth were like double all around. And yeah, I know, scary, right? Turns out that he built his house on top of what we refer to as the mound builders. You see these all throughout Ohio and sometimes all over the states.
Sure.
The Great Serpent in Chillicothe, I think, is a mound from the mound builders. And sometimes they would. These are before the Native Americans, if you want to think about it like that. They were all over the United States. They predate the Native Americans. So they would build these mounds, and sometimes in the bottom of the mounds they would have altars where they would hold ceremonies. Sometimes sacrificial things went on down there. So there's some speculation that perhaps that he built his house on sort of a sacrificial tomb down there in Lodi.
Wow.
So, there's a lot of history. There's a lot of sort of stories that go into, especially when you're in these rural areas. It's really fascinating.
Location, right?
Yeah. Well, so it all kind of comes together down there.
Wow. This is in Ohio, folks, for people that are watching and may not be from around. So if you want to, check it out, a lot of people do like to, or some people do like to travel and check things out. But these are locations that are in Ohio that you've written about. Go ahead, Mark.
Well, what's funny is I used to live in Lodi. And we had my daughter on our very first time we taped, and she had a story when she was 4 years old, and this scarecrow-like guy was walking down the stairs, and we were debating in our video, was she kind of like in a Twilight moment? And imagine that, or did it really happen? And we kind of came to the conclusion she's almost 30 years old, and it's still stuck with her after all this time. That there must be something to it.
Yeah. I think our brains do a lot of weird things when we have these experiences, right? And I think sometimes it's based on your beliefs. So sometimes our first thing is to explain it away, right? They were in a liminal state. They were dreaming. They weren't quite awake. Their brain wasn't really functioning like it could, and it saw something and interpreted it as something else, right? And I think that's a healthy thing to do. That's the critical thinking part of it. Not everything I see in the dark is a ghost. Sometimes it's just something in the dark, right?
Right.
So I think that's a healthy way to look at it. I always tell people it's okay to be enchanted. It's okay not to have the answers. It's okay to lean into sometimes the woo, as you guys call it, the woo. It's okay to lean into it. It helps us. If we're enchanted and we're in awe of something, it actually improves our overall sense of well-being. Um, People who are in awe feel closer. They feel smaller in the world. The world seems bigger. They seem closer to other people. They connect better. They're kinder. We need all that in the world right now. We need to be in awe of something. Right now, we're just disenchanted, whether it's financial stressors, work stressors, political stressors, world stressors. We're just bogged down. So when we look at the woo, when we look at these ghosts and apparitions, sometimes like going into a haunted house, you're stepping away from sometimes those problems, and when you cross that threshold, you sort of cross into another world, right? You cross into this world where all this fun, unexplainable phenomenon is happening, and you shut all that stuff out, right? At least for its 15-20 minutes or so. So I think that's why people really enjoy it. And I've met a lot of people that have to have the answer to it. Was it a ghost? Was it not a ghost? Was I doing this? It's okay to be uncertain. There's a little level of acceptance to that.
Do you have any fear of going into a haunted house and having a buddy come with you home?
Oh yeah. Yeah, I think that's something that I think we all have that sort of fear because, again, we read about it, we see it on TV. They really play it up in a lot of the shows on TV, and you'll read books about it, and people will talk about all these experiences. So I think that's something that you do have a fear of. I'm not an expert in that area. I've been to a lot of haunted houses. Sometimes you feel like some bad things start happening after you leave houses, and you kind of think, well, maybe this is it. Depending on your spiritual background, sometimes saying a prayer, sometimes going to somebody, they could remove spirits and things like that if that's something you believe in as well. So there's avenues to go down. But there's always a fear, right? When we walk into a haunted house, there's a fear that something's going to jump out in front of me and push me down the steps, or you know what I'm saying?
Sure.
It's always there. The likelihood of it is probably small, but it's always there. But there's a fear of everything else too, right? The fear of
That's true.
Numerous things we kind of overcome to get through our days.
Carnival folk.
Yeah, whatever. Yeah, whatever your fear is. Yeah, clowns. People are always scared of clowns.
That's from Austin Powers.
Oh, okay. Yeah, people are scared of clowns. Everything else.
Sure.
I'll tell you one thing. I admire your commitment. I mean, I was going to ask you, Edinburgh, Scotland, man. I mean, I don't know. I really don't know if I can think of a more kind of spooky, like the castles and
that's right,
everything like that. What led you in that direction? You weren't like picturing somebody with one of those ruffled collars carrying their own head on a platter walking through the castle, were you?
Yeah, no, it's so when I went to the University of Toledo, so I'm a Mac guy as well. I think everyone knows Mac, right? Yeah. And then so I went to the University of Toledo undergrad, and then I got a graduate degree in counseling, and then I worked in the mental health field for a little bit. But I was always interested in parapsychology, and at that time there was no colleges here in the States that taught parapsychology or gave you any sort of education or degrees in parapsychology. And the only place there's a lot of places in the UK, some in Germany, that give these degrees. So if you're really interested in it, you had to go overseas. The problem was University of Edinburgh is a top 25 university in the world. That's where they cloned the sheep Dolly in the 90s, if you remember that.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Charles Darwin went to the University of Edinburgh. So, I mean, it's tough to get in. So I filled out the application. I did all the stuff they wanted me to do. And I was like, yeah, I want to study parapsychology. And I thought, I'm never going to hear back from these people. But they took me. And I went and studied at the Coastler Parapsychology Unit at the University of Edinburgh. And I lived there for over a year. And I learned quite a bit over there. And the degree isn't, it's, when people think it's a parapsychology degree, it's more psychological research methods. So it's statistics, it's designing experiments. So a lot of my classmates were like cognitive psychology, individual differences, personality psychology, health psychology, social psychology, that type of thing. Just my dissertation, and I had a handful of classes that were parapsychology related. So it wasn't like I was just learning about ghosts for a year.
Sure.
It was more learning about how to conduct research for a year with ghosts as a side.
Have you seen any parallels with ghosts and UFOs, UFO stories, or one going into the other? I remember, and I think it was Vegas a year or two ago, where there was some people that said a ship had landed and aliens came out, scared the crap out of them, but then they were having weird haunting type things happening in their house as well with the crucifix and that sort of thing. Is there any sort of parallels, or are you like UFOs are not in my wheelhouse?
UFOs are not in my wheelhouse. I will say that that's something I've never really been interested in or had deep dives in. Cryptids, cryptozoology, UFOs, not something I spent a lot of time dealing with. It doesn't mean I don't believe it or don't. Those stories seem valid, but it's just not something that. It's tough to be. I see a lot of people that feel like they've grasped all three of those things, and to me, that's so difficult to do. Just the literature on ghosts is mind-boggling. I mean, it's every day I'm getting a new paper or a new research article or a new book or a podcast, and it's just my brain can't even absorb all the information on ghosts. I can't imagine how people do it for three different things because my brain is more compartmentalized. It's not able to take these three things and come up with a unified theory that I sometimes hear. Is that unified,
Sure.
The Mothman, John Keel, sort
Big
of. Yeah, it's all sort of meshed together. Like ghosts and poltergeists, I guess those two are a little bit together, but that's also psi phenomenon. That's telepathy, entanglement, ESP, recurrent spontaneous psychokinesis, all that stuff.
Well, that's one thing we talk about all the time because we talk about content, and with the unexplained, I mean, content is limitless.
Yeah.
Ghosts, like you said, paranormal, UFOs, Bigfoot, dream interpretation. I mean, miracles. It's endless. So, we really want to focus kind of this month. We really want to focus on some paranormal things, some ghosts, things like that, because of the Halloween season, and those are points of interest right now. But I mean, the possibilities are endless. I want to ask you a real quick question, and I know you got things to do besides talk to us. But behind you on the wall, are those ghosts? Are those comic books? What are those? I'm a comic book guy.
Yeah, they're comic books. They're from the DC had a run of a title called Ghosts.
Okay.
I think it was in the I want to say the 80s. So some of those are from the DC run, and another one was just ghost stories. They were from the 60s or something. And then Dr. Spector, Ripley's Believe It or Not, they had comic books that kind of went over ghosts as well. And then there's a Superman one up there at the top where it was an odd Superman story where they did supposedly Clark Kent died and they did a seance.
Wow.
It's a weird one.
I think I had a Ripley's Believe It or Not, one of those comic books.
Oh yeah, you see them around every once in a while, but they're really good. The DC Ghost series was a good ghost series in the 80s. It's not well known or collected,
right?
But if you come across them, I always recommend picking them up. So I got a handful over there. They're spread throughout the.
No Caspers though.
No, I don't have Casper. I do.
He's friendly.
Yeah, I when I was younger, I loved Casper. When I was like 6-7 years old, I loved Casper. So it was a
But
You always
Brandon,
kind of, even when you're young, you sort of get drawn to things, and you kind of think, well, why am I drawn to that? And next thing you know,
Right.
you're 45 years old and you're studying ghosts.
Exactly.
What came first?
sure.
Did that trigger all this, or was that always there? And I don't know. The genetics? I have no idea.
Well, everybody's different and has different interests, and if everybody had the same interests, that wouldn't be fun, would it?
That's true. Yeah, you're right.
I wanted to ask you, Brandon, from earlier. I didn't get a chance to ask when you were talking about the telepathy and that sort of thing. Are these skills that you can develop, or is it either you have it or you don't? Or it's a one-time thing where it happens one time and it never happens again?
So I'm not an expert, and I don't think there's an answer to that. From my experience, it seems like psychic phenomenon, specifically telepathy or entanglement, is not something that just happens. It's sometimes not under our conscious control. So it's not like I could flip a switch and read your mind. From my experience with things, these telepathy, these entanglement things that I talk about usually happen when people are in some sort of distress. They usually happen when there's some sort of something happening in the environment. That doesn't necessarily mean that people don't have the ability to do that. Like psychics could help you or find things for you. But I think that it's very difficult, and it's very rare from my experience to have someone who can just turn it on and off. There are periods of it. I've seen some research papers and some experiments with people who score really, really high on these sort of psi tests, and they seem to have these gifts. There was one research experiment where they put these they put these sort of like magnetic helmets on people, and it would measure their EEGs and things like that. And they created almost like a magnetic field around their head. And what they found was, so if I'm sitting across from Tim here, and I'm a psychic and I'm reading Tim's mind, they found that when I had hits or when I was right, the EEGs synchronized. So our brain waves synchronized, right? So when hits happen, something happens where our brains synchronize and we're able to communicate with each other. They were able to find out some sort of magnetic field pattern that increased the likelihood of this happening. So it can happen theoretically, right? Theoretically, it can happen. But how those things get linked and how we sort of read people's minds, it doesn't seem like we could flip a switch. There seems to be something that has to happen between me and Tim where we connect and we synchronize, and then information is passed. So I have a cell phone in front of me, but the only way I could talk to you, Tim, is if I dial your number. Mm-hmm. Then we could talk to each other. I just can't pull up the phone and talk to Tim. There has to be some way to connect. And I think that's the elusive part that really no one has figured out since humankind, really. How do you connect like that? Some people claim to have the ability to do it. There's some research that says it has to do with manipulating magnetic fields around your head, and then synchronization can happen. But we haven't really figured that out consistently.
On a humorous note, I was watching, it had been a long time since I'd seen it, but I was watching the beginning of Ghostbusters where Bill Murray was testing those kids for ESP, and he had the cards. He had a real attractive young woman in there, and then a young guy, and he had a shock device hooked up to him. Yeah, and the guy, even when he got it right, he was shocking him, and the girl should say, is it a triangle? And it would be an octagon or something. He goes, you've gotten like 10 in a row, and she was missing every one of them. But just for ESPA, that was hilarious.
Yeah, those are actually called Xena cards. They used those in the 50s and 60s to test ESP. So if you're ever interested in parapsychology, Ghostbusters 1 and 2 has a lot of sort of references to it. That's one of them.
Interesting.
Because Dan Aykroyd, who wrote it, was fascinated with parapsychology. So he has a lot of those things in there. And obviously three of the Ghostbusters are parapsychologists. So.
Perfect. Well, it was an honor having you on, Brandon. I don't know, Mark, do you have anything else you want to, before we close up?
Well, you want to plug your books?
Oh,
Do you want to plug your website?
And do you have anything else coming in the near future, or any other books on the way, or lectures, or anything that you're doing, appearances?
it's pretty silent now. I have some events here in Medina that I do just with the local ghost stories that I've, or the book about local haunted locations that I kind of talk about. But I have a book called The Ghost Studies. You can get it on Amazon. I have a book called Haunted Medina County, Ohio, which you can get on Amazon. The best thing to do is just go to my website, hauntedtheories.com. It has all my research there. It has all the books and links to get the books from Amazon. A little bit about me. I do some writing on there. Guys, I guess you can call it a blog. Just some thoughts and theories about ghosts on there. But that's the best way to do it. And I have a Facebook page called Haunted Theories.
Do you have a goal of, I would like to accomplish this, whatever this is, in your course of studies? Like you have like there's like a holy grail of, I want to be able to figure this out or do this. Do you have something that's kind of like there in mind that you wish you could do?
It's a great question. I probably should have that.
That's an assignment. We're going to have you back.
I probably should write something down of a goal I have. I tend to just like bounce from thing to thing. We're doing this research paper, and then this comes up, and then we do that research paper. And I've been writing a book about a haunted location in New York here for a while that we stayed at for a couple of days. So you just kind of get up and you focus on whatever's in front of you, and then usually the more you focus on something else comes up. So I don't really have like this project that I want to accomplish. I suppose maybe I'm just sitting around waiting for that. Maybe.
Yes, you got one in you. You have one in you. I know you do. I can tell. And that's not clairvoyance.
Yeah. Well, anyone who writes, especially like with ghosts and things like that, you do find that you just get you get caught up in what you're doing, and then the moment you move away from it, you forget everything you did. So the ghost studies I wrote in 2017, and then sometimes people will come up to me and ask me questions about it, and I have no idea what they're talking about because they've just read it. Whereas my mind, I'm already 44 projects beyond that. That sometimes it's hard for me to pull back to where I was when I was writing it. So I think for me, I just move so fast to the next project that I'm always constantly in motion. And you guys as podcasters probably are kind of the same way. You gain a lot from who you talk to, but you got to move on to the next one, right?
Sure.
And sometimes you forget what those people even said the last time you were there because you're just moving on. And that's kind of how it is sometimes with research and ghosts and books. It's the same thing. It's not that you don't care or don't remember or it wasn't a good time, but you're on to the next one and you're so focused on it that the past just somehow blurs away.
Well, I think we got to conquer our fears, Mark. And I think we've got to ask Brandon right now on this podcast that the next time he goes to a haunted location, he allows us to tag along.
Oh, boy.
What do you think?
That's up to you guys.
I'll be the guy behind you, crouching down, grabbing on the back of your shirt, Brandon.
I got freaked out just going to the Mansfield Reformatory, which supposedly is haunted. I don't know if you've ever been there. I'm sure you have.
That's a haunted location.
It's haunted for sure.
Did you do the overnight ghost thing, or did you just do a tour?
No, I just did the tour a few years ago.
Well, they do have that overnight thing at Mansfield if you liked it.
Have you done it?
I have not done it, no. But I hear most people love doing it. There's a lot of places in Ohio where you could rent a place out for like a weekend, a haunted location, if you really want to get into it. Or if you just want to visit a haunted location. There's
I
some
don't know if
places.
my wife will let me. She's afraid of something coming home.
I mean, you went
She
to
wants
Mansfield.
just me. She doesn't want
Uh,
me and Bubba.
yeah. Well, I get it. Yeah, I mean, you got to respect the people around you too, right?
Sure.
So if they're uneasy about it, you don't want to force that upon them. But you can do a ghost tour. There's plenty of them here in Ohio, locally too, where you just sort of casually go into haunted locations. They had one last week here in Medina, Ohio, on the square. They have one actually Thursday, and then the next Thursday they have another one. So
We're in.
So have you gone to like the ghost tours, Gettysburg and places like that? Is that just a touristy kind of thing, or is there really something there?
I don't. I've never experienced anything on a ghost tour, and I've been on quite a few of them. It's probably a mixture of both. Paranormal tourism is very popular. Most cities now have a ghost tour associated with them. Whether you're going, to, I can't think of a city that I've been to that doesn't really have a ghost tour.
Really?
Gettysburg has probably 5 or 10 companies that run them, but it's always sort of around, and you can take them. Usually you walk outside, you hear stories, and that's really it. They're family friendly, so it doesn't really get too intense. So you could sort of dip your toes in it if you want to think about it like that, and see if you get an interest in it. And then if you do, you take it a next step further. You could talk to local ghost hunters. There's some places here in Medina, some groups here in Medina that would probably let you guys tag along. So
I was in Savannah for one, and that's supposedly a highly haunted
Yep.
place. And also, my son, he lives in Baltimore,
Yep.
and wants me to come down there because he said there's a lot of things down there because of Edgar Allan Poe and
Yep.
all that kind of stuff. So it is interesting. I don't know if I'm going to jump in with both feet, like I said, and stay in an attic in the middle of the night with a candle and a Ouija board. But I mean, I would like to. It would be interesting just to kind of see what's out there and do some exploring.
Well,
dip your toes in it.
One last thing, and then we'll finish up. I know you're not big into UFOs, but we've done this, and every guest so far is like this. The would you rather? Would you rather take 5 minutes to talk to a ghost? I know you're probably going to say that. Or if a spaceship landed, would you rather take 5 minutes to talk to a space alien who walks out of that ship? Which would you rather?
Yeah, ghost.
Yeah,
I would
figured.
think that. I feel like finding out what happens in the afterlife would be of more interest to me than knowing what happens in another universe.
But if they're still here, do they really know what happens in the afterlife? Because aren't they kind of like maybe possibly stuck?
Oh, sure.
Maybe they don't. Maybe they don't know. Or can spirits go to different realms or come back and forth? I've always heard that like if you're a Christian and you believe that people go to heaven, that once you're in heaven, that you're not going to be haunting people.
Yeah.
Is that pretty fair?
Yeah, everyone has a different sort of viewpoint on it. Every religion, at least, or
Sure.
every sort of spirituality has a different viewpoint on it. Catholicism, I think, used to say that there was no such thing as ghosts, and then somehow purgatory crept into their vision of things, and then this idea of, I think it was, I can't remember what it was, but Catholicism, it used to be where if you had somebody die, you would go pay the priest a certain amount of money, and they would say a prayer, so they would move them out of purgatory into heaven.
Oh.
So it became something like that.
Money talks, baby.
Kind of see that a little bit, but you can see how things shift a little bit. So purgatory means that you're not in heaven and you're not in hell. You're sort of waiting to be judged, and where do you go? And other religions have sort of that in between as well. So then that opens the door a little bit. So if I saw a ghost, does that necessarily mean they've been in the afterlife? You're absolutely right. They could just, they might not even know they're a ghost. We've all seen the others, and we all seen Sixth Sense and all that stuff. Sometimes they don't know they're a ghost. It might not give me answers, but if I was able to sit down and talk to a ghost, at least that would sort of give me an idea that, ghosts exist and they are real, and gather a little bit of information about what they do know to help me kind of better understand what to look at or where to go. So I think I would be more fascinated with that. And if I knew, we just don't know what happens after we die, right? I think mainstream science basically says we're just a bunch of electricity and circuits, like a TV, and then once it stops working, that's it. There's nothing else besides that. It's just the blankness, right? Where no part of us goes on, no personality goes on, no soul, no spirit, no essence, nothing happens after that. A ghost, if I saw, might make me think that there is a next step, whether that's our consciousness just going into collective unconscious or the collective consciousness, or another realm, or heaven, or wherever it goes. To me, that says that consciousness does survive death. So if consciousness survives death, to me, that means there's an afterlife. So if a ghost is talking to me, that means our consciousness isn't in our body and just ceases to exist. Something happens outside of that. So it answers. The ghost might not answer questions, but it answers questions inside my head. I could do that.
Sure. That makes sense. So actually, basically, if you see a ghost, it might move you from being an atheist to either agnostic, or it might make you be a believer.
Yeah,
or do you think?
Yeah, and again, I think religion kind of falls in that category of when we die, religion sort of takes over where we go. But consciousness is consciousness. So if that, what happens to consciousness after we die doesn't necessarily have to involve a religion, right? If part of my consciousness just moves on from my body or graduates from my body and goes into the Akashic records or the collective unconsciousness or the ether or something like that, it's this idea that some part of us survives. Where it goes, that's where religion comes in. Does it go to heaven? Does it go to hell? Does it go to purgatory? Does it travel through? Egyptians have this test that your soul goes to after you die, right? Hinduism, Buddhism, they all have these different perspectives on what happens to your soul or consciousness after you die. But the general idea is part of our consciousness moves on. And I think that's what every sort of religion or belief regarding the afterlife has. Our consciousness survives our bodily death.
What I find curious is I know a couple people that are atheists, and they're just really nice people, really great people. And I'm thinking to myself, what is the incentive to live a great life if you don't think there's anything at the end or any reward or afterlife? It just makes you wonder, why not just go after every physical and and just what makes you want to be just a great person, but they are. So
you don't want to go to jail.
Yeah, there you go.
All these sort of intrinsic motivations that keep us from punching the person next to us in the face, right?
Yeah.
Jail is one of them. But then, there's the ethical, the moral, the sort of religious viewpoint of that being a bad behavior and karma. Right. And if I'm bad in this life, something bad happens others. So I think religion and those sort of beliefs kind of tether us to morality. But, maybe they find some sort of that intrinsic value somewhere else. I suppose you'd have to ask them, but it's a fascinating thing to talk about, because ghosts open the door to a lot of things. So if Bigfoot's running around in the woods, it's an animal out there, right? If aliens exist, I don't want to say an animal, but it's another life being that's out there, right?
Right.
that has nothing to do with the soul or what happens to us or
Right.
collective consciousness.
True.
So to me, those are just, if I'm like, we look at these ghost hunters and things like that, they're always seeking something external, right? So they think that the ghosts are external things. Like Bigfoot's external. Rabbits, bears. I'm out there hunting these things that are external out in the world.
You could hypothetically you could touch it.
Exactly. Ghosts are the opposite of that. So this idea that they're just these external things waiting for us to see them. They're just hanging around, and we have to be at the right place at the right time. I don't think is correct. I think it has more to do with the right person in the right setting, and that's sort of what we talk about in some of our research. So the right person in the right setting, you might see a ghost. So if I stand on the train tracks for hours and hours and hours, and I know it's an active rail, a train is eventually going to come by, right?
Right.
That's an external thing. It's always going to come by. But ghosts don't work like that. So you could put 100 people in the same spot at the right time, and not all 100 are going to see a ghost. Some will, some won't. So that tells you it's the right person in the right setting, not so much the right setting.
Wow. So Brandon, it's been great talking to you, and I hope that we're going to be able to talk to you again sometime. I really have enjoyed it, and Tim.
Yeah, the first time's always special too, Brandon. But we'd love to have you back. We appreciate you taking so much of your time. I know time's valuable, and you're a busy guy. And we went way over, I think, than what we had discussed. But you're a very interesting guy, and we really enjoyed having you on. We promise that we won't take so much of your time next time. But boy, we really appreciate you. We're honored to have you on tonight. Thank you.
Thanks for having me. It was a good time. It's nice. It was nice talking to you guys. You had a lot of really great questions. I really appreciate that. And it's
thank you.
Nice learning from you guys as well.
Thank you so much, my friend.
All right. Have a good night.
Take care.
Too.